When a magical storm dragged Choi Yeonsung into the deepest part of the abyss, everyone would have considered him already dead. Even Earth's strongest S-rank hunters needed full raid parties to survive monsters from that world. But Yeonsung had been trapped there alone for hundreds of years. And when another gigantic abyssal monster finally found him, it did not find a desperate C-rank hunter struggling to survive. It found a massacre. Mountains of monsters were already lying dead, the newest beast was being crushed beneath his bare hands, and in the middle of that hell stood Yeonsung, looking at creatures that terrified humanity like they were nothing more than his next training exercise. The forgotten C-rank hunter had trained so far beyond human limits that he had become a living constellation. And now, he was finally returning to Earth, where the world's strongest hunters had no idea that the quiet man standing before them could destroy everything they feared without using even 1% of his strength. Faint glimmers of light spark against a backdrop of deep purple and crimson gas. Yeonsung Choi is suspended in the middle of a vast, swirling cosmic abyss with no end in sight. The guy is literally free-falling through a nebula like it's a casual Sunday stroll. This is a place where gravity doesn't exist and the view is honestly to die for. Jagged rocks and debris float aimlessly through a dimension known only as the land of infinite chaos. A massive, multi-headed dragon with serrated teeth and scales harder than diamond erupts from the shadows. The scale of this monster makes Yeonsung look like a literal ant in the wind. It lets out a roar that probably shattered a few nearby moons just for the fun of it. The monster's heads are covered in obsidian armor and crackle with the energy of 1,000 dying suns. Every single glowing red eye is locked onto Yeonsung as the beast prepares to delete him from existence. It represents the physical embodiment of disorder and the kind of nightmare you can't wake up from. It's basically a welcoming committee from the deepest pit of space, and they definitely didn't bring a gift basket. Yeonsung doesn't even flinch as he stares down the rows of razor-sharp teeth, letting out a sharp and annoyed grunt. He clenches his fists, and a violent surge of blue aura explodes from his body like a detonating supernova. The energy lances forward in sharp streaks, striking the dragon right in its massive, ugly face. He really just told a cosmic horror to shut up using pure, unadulterated violence. The impact creates a shockwave of light that illuminates the entire purple void for thousands of miles. As the dragon reels back from the blow, an even larger, more terrifying shadow materializes directly behind Yeonsung. A giant, spectral bear beast with glowing white eyes and a jaw wide enough to swallow a skyscraper looms over the scene. Yeonsung is now caught in a literal sandwich between two gods of destruction. This is exactly what happens when you skip the fine print on a celestial contract. Sharp streaks of violent purple energy rip across the battlefield like lightning. The massive bear beast lunges forward, crashing into the dragon with a force that sends shockwaves through the very ground Yeonsung Choi stands on. It is a total free-for-all where the weakest being in the area is still a god-tier threat. Glowing red filaments erupt from the shadows and coil tightly around Yeonsung's neck and limbs. He is hoisted high into the air, completely immobilized by the entity known as Adio, the master of the dimensional hole. Most hunters would be praying for a quick death, but Yeonsung is just getting warmed up. A close-up on Yeonsung's face shows him bleeding from several wounds, yet his expression is one of pure, unadulterated joy. His eyes ignite with a fierce, celestial blue glow as he stares down the monster that thinks it has him trapped. He isn't trapped with them, they are trapped in a dimension with a man who refuses to die. We see Yeonsung's massive, battle-hardened back as he stands amidst the smoldering remains of his enemies. He sighs, noting that it took 300 years of constant, bloody warfare to finally clear this stage. That is an insane amount of time to spend doing nothing but punching cosmic horrors in the face. Yeonsung looms over the edge of a massive impact crater, looking out at a horizon that seems to stretch into infinity. The system officially recognizes him as the undefeated avatar of training, a title earned through centuries of impossible survival. His only concern now is finding a way back to Earth before the world completely forgets his name. High above a modern city skyline, a terrifyingly large purple face made of stars and nebulae peers down through a rift in the clouds. This confirms the arrival of the constellations, proving that the myths of old were actually warnings for the future. Humanity is about to realize that their place at the top of the food chain just got revoked. Winged celestial shadows descend through a shimmering purple rift in the stars. These entities trade divine blessings for the absolute devotion of human followers. Each new soul that kneels adds more power to a constellation's cosmic authority. It is basically a high-stakes pyramid scheme where the currency is your literal spirit. A grotesque, multi-eyed behemoth looms over the tiny blue marble of Earth. Not every divine being is looking to play nice, as many prefer total domination over subtle blessings. Fortunately, a specific defender has emerged to keep these cosmic invaders from turning the planet into a buffet. Earth really went from a quiet neighborhood to a galactic war zone in record time. A piercing blue light ignites within the focused eye of Yeonsung Choi. He has evolved into a young constellation, now officially known as the undefeatable avatar of training. Instead of sitting on a throne, he is standing over a stove, tossing a massive steak like he is at a local barbecue. Seeing a god tier being handle a kitchen utensil with that much intensity is honestly hilarious. A thick slab of meat sizzles loudly inside a glowing, metallic frying pan. Yeonsung casually explains to his companion that the cookware is forged from pure, indestructible adamantium. The great mage Odagon looks like his brain is about to melt while sensing the strange magic in the butter. Using the rarest metal in existence to fry a steak is the ultimate culinary flex. Yeonsung stares into the distance while remembering a massive, shadowy bull constellation from his past. He explains that he spared the beast's life just so he could harvest some high-quality milk for his cooking. He was so starved for a decent meal back then that he prioritized rare ingredients over a high kill count. Most warriors want a trophy, but this guy just wants a creamy sauce. A sharp knife slices through a melting pat of butter on top of the perfectly seared meat. This is a precious ingredient they haven't tasted in 300 years, and Yeonsung decides it is finally time to indulge. Odagon is completely stunned that his master accepted milk as a battle prize instead of claiming a new kingdom. Yeonsung is officially the only entity in the abyss who values a full stomach over world dominion. Yeonsung gestures for the goblin to dig in as the campfire crackles between them. Odagon grabs a massive slab of meat and takes a bite so large it looks like his jaw might actually unhinge. It is the first time in over 3 centuries that anything besides raw survival has been on the menu. A golden system notification flashes the moment Odagon swallows the first bite of the constellation steak. Blinding light begins to leak from the creature's pores while his small frame starts to tremble from the sheer mana density. That steak isn't just a meal, it is a high-grade magical explosive disguised as a medium-rare dinner. The system warns that the unknown constellation's butter is causing Odagon's mana circle to run completely wild. The goblin enters a state of total sensory overload, his eyes turning stark white as he drools in a trance of pure, celestial ecstasy. The butter is so potent it is basically rewriting his DNA while he is still trying to chew. Yeonsung stares at his glowing companion with a face that says he has seen it all, but this is still weird. He admits to himself that he truly has no idea what makes goblins tick, especially when they are vibrating like a faulty engine. He just wanted a quiet meal, but he accidentally turned his only friend into a radioactive light bulb. The perspective pulls away from the tiny fire and zooms out into the infinite, cold reaches of the abyss. Swirling stars and deep purple nebulas stretch across the void, marking the lonely territory Yeonsung has occupied for ages. This is the cosmic prison of a man who hasn't seen a sun or a blue sky in several lifetimes. The story rewinds tens of thousands of years in abyss time to a crowded gym back on Earth. A younger Yeonsung is seen grinding through a heavy bench press session, his muscles strained and his hair soaked in sweat. Even back then, his only solution to being rejected by the world was to lift every heavy object in his immediate vicinity. A weary trainer looks down at the struggling young hunter with a heavy, judgmental sigh. He is clearly tired of seeing Yeonsung try so hard for such mediocre results while the gifted hunters breeze past him. The man is witnessing a level of stubbornness that most people would honestly consider a mental illness. A pair of legs struggles on a weight machine while instructors gossip in the background. Every teacher in the facility has already written Yeonsung Choi off as a lost cause. The guy is essentially a gym ghost that everyone ignores. Yeonsung stands alone in a cramped, poster-plastered gym surrounded by heavy iron. He has been obsessed with physical power since he was a kid. This isn't a hobby for him, it's a full-blown addiction to the grind. A monstrous skull hangs on the wall above Yeonsung as he executes a heavy overhead press. He truly believes that raw strength is the only currency that matters in this new world. He is trying to muscle his way through a system that usually relies on magic. Sweat pours down Yeonsung's face as he grips a shaking barbell with white-knuckled intensity. He pushes his body past the breaking point every single day without fail. Most people would have fainted 10 sets ago, but he just keeps pushing. A status window appears over a white void, labeling him a simple C+ rank human hunter. This is the ceiling he has been hitting for years despite his insane work ethic. Being a C rank in a world of gods is like bringing a toothpick to a boss fight. A brilliant blue light pierces the pitch-black darkness of the void as the word Hunter appears. This is the specific title that changed the fate of the entire planet. It represents the only line of defense humanity has left. A squad of hunters uses magic and blades to hold back a snarling, horned beast. The world connected to the abyss, and humanity had to invent a new job just to keep from being eaten. It's a high-stakes protection racket for the survival of the species. A purple demon stands amidst a rain of cash and legendary artifacts from the depths. Dungeon crawling isn't just about safety, it's about the massive, priceless loot that comes with the blood. Greed is often a better motivator than heroism in this industry. Back in the gym, a guy in a loud shirt and sunglasses lounges in a chair while Yeonsung lifts heavy. This leader is the one calling the shots for their small-time hunter crew. He looks more like a vacationing tourist than a serious warrior. Yeonsung's face is slick with sweat as the leader warns him that B-rank monsters are way too dangerous. The group is terrified of actually challenging themselves or taking a real risk. They want the paycheck without the possibility of losing a limb. The leader keeps droning on about how even C-rank dungeons leave most parties injured. Yeonsung just listens silently, his eyes fixed on the weight in front of him. Some people play it safe, but safety doesn't lead to the top of the rankings. Yeonsung looks up with a sharp, determined gaze that says he isn't buying any of the excuses. He tells his leader that aiming for stronger dungeons is the only way to actually grow. He is the only one in the room who actually wants to become a legend. A heavy barbell sits abandoned on the floor while a conversation about a breakup plays out. Yeonsung Choi confirms the relationship is over, leaving his companion totally confused because he's actually a decent guy. The friend in the floral shirt facepalms because the split was apparently a mutual, emotionless decision. It's the ultimate sign that Yeonsung is officially married to the grind. A dark gradient transition suddenly explodes into a scene of chaotic fire and violent impacts. Someone screams a warning that a monster has slipped past the main defense line and is heading straight for them. A hideous creature with jagged fangs and glowing eyes lunges forward with a bone-chilling roar. This thing definitely wasn't expecting a human to be standing in its way. Blood sprays across the air as a massive impact slams into the creature's head. Yeonsung stands his ground, his muscular frame soaking up the force of the monster's desperate charge without flinching. He's out here blocking lethal strikes with his bare forearms like it's just another set of reps at the gym. He is basically a human fortress in a world addicted to hiding behind flashy spells. The camera zooms in on the monster's gnashing teeth while onlookers criticize Yeonsung's choice of combat style. They argue that magic is the only way to deal real damage and wonder why anyone would ever choose the path of a martial artist. Yeonsung stands triumphantly over the beast he just annihilated, having claimed the one training method everyone else threw away. He turned a neglected skill into a masterclass in monster disposal. Yeonsung's muscular torso is highlighted against the darkness as he clenches his fists in a display of pure resolve. He doesn't have a single regret about his path, despite the constant mockery from other hunters who think he's wasting his time. In a blue-tinted training room, he practices grueling horse stances and strikes to sharpen his physical limits. Magic might be easier on the body, but he prefers the visible progress of his own sweat and blood. The room shakes as Yeonsung Choi delivers a high, powerful kick that sends a shockwave through the air. He acknowledges that while he loves the growth, there are parts of being a martial artist that are genuinely disappointing. This path is clearly built on pain, but he's already too deep to turn back now. The road to the top is paved with bruises and broken bones. Yeonsung Choi stares forward with sweat dripping down his face and a look of pure desperation in his eyes. He decides that the current level of martial arts isn't nearly enough to reach his goals, as the path of a normal human is too slow. He resolves to train longer and harder, pushing his physical limits into a territory that would break a normal man. The obsession is officially taking over his entire existence. A sudden voice pierces through the darkness while Yeonsung Choi is mid-kick during his mental training. The Oracle watches him from the shadows of his consciousness, noting his insane work ethic even while he is asleep. She bluntly points out that he is currently in a dream state, breaking his focus and leaving him momentarily stunned. Sleep is clearly just another arena for him to conquer. A massive silhouette of a divine woman with flowing white hair and giant balancing scales appears in a burst of light. Yeonsung Choi demands to know who has invaded his mind, but the sheer size of the entity leaves him breathless. She represents a power that exists far beyond the realm of human hunters and terrestrial physics. The visual of those scales suggests he is about to be weighed and measured. The Oracle reveals herself fully, wearing intricate purple and white robes with bandages wrapped tightly over her eyes. She stands before the stunned Yeonsung Choi, looking like a beacon of celestial authority in the middle of a white void. He can only watch as she prepares to deliver a message that will reshape his destiny. The power gap between them is wider than any ocean. The Oracle offers a subtle, knowing smile and explains that she has to keep the conversation brief. She gets right to the point, offering a contract that bridges the gap between his human frailty and her divine blessings. Yeonsung Choi doesn't hesitate for a second, ready to do whatever it takes to secure his future and survive the trials ahead. He just signed a deal with the ultimate power player. The Oracle freezes in place, clearly not expecting Yeonsung Choi to agree to her terms this fast. He gives a blunt, yeah, that cuts through the divine tension like a hot knife through butter. He only has one requirement, and that is getting the power he needs to stop being everyone's punching bag. The Oracle seems genuinely stunned by his lack of fear, her hands trembling slightly as she realizes she found someone truly desperate. Yeonsung Choi is basically signing a blank check with his life on the line. The air begins to vibrate as the Oracle raises her arm, summoning a pillar of sapphire light that pierces the darkness. She identifies herself as the goddess of balance, letting the weight of her celestial authority fill the room. Blinding flashes of white energy erupt from her palm, signaling the official start of their contract. It is like a spiritual lightning bolt hitting a mortal lightning rod. The power level in the room just went from 0 to end of the world in 3 seconds flat. Dark, jagged visions of the future bleed into existence, showing demonic shadows tearing through the modern world. The Oracle explains that a great danger is approaching Earth in just a few short years. A massive, bloody jaw lined with thousands of teeth looms over a helpless city, ready to chew up everything in sight. People will look back at the current dungeons as the good old days once this nightmare arrives. The world is basically on a countdown to becoming a literal buffet for monsters. Yeonsung Choi and the goddess float silently above a scorched, red version of Earth that looks like a dying coal. She delivers the ultimate ultimatum, stating that he is the singular key to preventing this apocalyptic future. Yansung stares at her with wide eyes, looking like a guy who just realized he is way out of his depth. He was just looking for a bit of respect, and now he is the designated bodyguard for the entire human race. Talk about a massive career pivot. The goddess reaches out and places a steady hand on his muscular shoulder, marking him as her chosen one. She does not sugarcoat the situation, telling him that his transformation will require agonizing work that is anything but easy. A warm, knowing smile appears on her face, even though her eyes remain hidden behind those white bandages. She is betting everything on this rejected hunter because he has the one thing other hunters lack: pure, unadulterated grit. The Oracle wears a serene smile that doesn't quite match the terrifying proposal she just dropped on the table. She is basically asking who in their right mind would sign a contract this lopsided and dangerous. Yansung Choi stands firm as the atmosphere thickens with the promise of a training session that will break his body. He is looking at her with a mix of sweat and pure desperation, ready to take the leap into total chaos. This is the moment where most people would realize they are in way over their heads and start looking for the exit. The Oracle extends a bandaged hand toward him, offering a path that defies every bit of common sense a hunter should have. She knows that under normal circumstances, there is absolutely no way a hunter would accept these insane terms. A dark, misty void swallows the light as the reality of this unfair contract becomes undeniably clear. This isn't a career move. It is a total surrender of his own free will to a being he barely knows. He is essentially signing away his life for a power that might just kill him before he even gets to use it. Deep, golden text burns into the darkness, explaining the absolute binding nature of making a contract with a constellation. Being bound to a celestial entity means Yansung Choi is no longer the master of his own fate or future. A flash of light reveals the crushing weight of being immortal under the thumb of a divine master who views humans as tools. This is the ultimate deal with the devil scenario, just with more glowing hair and celestial bandages. He is basically accepting a divine collar in exchange for the raw strength needed to survive the coming storm. A massive, dark shadow with a jagged crown looms over a tiny human silhouette, demanding a lifetime of servitude. These entities lure hunters in with the promise of benefits, but the fine print usually involves a total loss of self and soul. Horrific, many-eyed creatures with serrated teeth and massive claws crowd around a terrified man as they compete for their next servant. The divine world is apparently just one big, bloody auction where humans are the only currency on the board. Yansung Choi is jumping straight into a meat grinder where the gods are the ones turning the handle and laughing about it. Yansung Choi looks up with a stoic expression while the background fades into a pale blue light. He is the only hunter who doesn't know the intricate, bloody rules of this divine game, making him a total wildcard in the eyes of the gods. Being the underdog is usually a death sentence in this world, but for a guy like him, it is just another Tuesday. The Oracle floats high above the ground, her ornate robes drifting as she explains the twisted mechanics of the abyss. She warns him that time moves on a completely different scale there, and stepping into that realm means he might never find his way back to the timeline he knows. This isn't just a simple training trip, it is a permanent exile from human reality. Yansung's face is shown in a tight close-up as he suddenly connects the dots to a famous anime training room. He realizes the horrifying temporal shift is actually his biggest advantage for catching up to the world's elite hunters in record time. The guy is literally planning a cosmic speedrun while his very soul is on the line. Yansung bows his head slightly, acknowledging the grim reality that there is no such thing as a free lunch when dealing with deities. The Oracle assumes he needs time to process the sheer magnitude of this sacrifice and offers him a full week to say his final farewells. She clearly underestimates just how little he has left to lose in the world that rejected him. Yansung stands tall and accepts the contract immediately, catching the celestial being completely off guard with his resolve. He explains that he has zero attachments to his current life and can settle his entire existence with a single goodbye letter. It is a chilling reminder that he has basically been living like a ghost among the living for years. Violent blue sparks erupt from Yansung's body as the transformation process finally takes hold of his physical form. The Oracle watches the energy flare in awe, admitting that her previous readings of human greed were completely wrong when it came to this specific man. Massive purple lightning arcs across a swirling celestial void as the central light source fractures into 1,000 glowing pieces. The goddess of balance initiates her divine ritual, sending jagged shards of reality flying through the air like lethal fragments of cosmic glass. This is exactly what it looks like when a high-ranking constellation stops playing nice and begins a lethal trial. Yansung Choi stands firm and resolute as a towering divine presence promises to deliver concentrated power directly into his soul. The goddess lays out the ultimate terms of their contract, stating that overcoming this ordeal is his only ticket to becoming her personal servant. It is the most intense job interview in human history where the only alternative to success is literal erasure. A weathered hand reaches directly into a swirling, chaotic vortex of purple and blue cosmic energy that threatens to consume everything. Yansung Choi channels the incoming magical surge through his physical frame, thrusting his arm out as white light erupts from his fingertips to stabilize the flow. He is essentially acting as a human lightning rod for a god-tier power plant that is currently overloading. A brilliant streak of white light tears violently through the absolute darkness, leaving a trail of divine sparks and energy residue in its wake. The world blurs into a mess of sharp vertical speed lines as the transfer of power reaches its absolute terminal velocity. This transition is clearly not something meant for a normal human body to withstand without being completely torn apart. A pristine white envelope sealed with a single red wax stamp falls softly onto a gym mat next to a set of heavy iron weights. This quiet, mundane moment is immediately obliterated by a blinding white flash that consumes the entire frame in an instant. 1 second you are finishing a set at the local gym, and the next, the universe is dropping a divine subpoena. Jagged blue lightning bolts crash repeatedly into the earth, carving out a smoking, jagged crater in the middle of a pitch-black landscape. Yansung Choi hunches over in the center of the impact zone, coughing violently as his lungs struggle to process the overwhelming atmospheric pressure. The abyss does not believe in a warm-up, and he is currently feeling every single volt of that painful welcome. Yansung Choi hunches over, clutching his own shoulders as if trying to hold his soul inside his body. The sheer weight of the magic power in the air is crushing his lungs and making his skin crawl. Above him, jagged pillars of neon green rock float aimlessly against a backdrop of endless purple stars. This looks less like a training ground and more like a high-level dungeon designed to kill any intruder on sight. Yansung stares out at the desolate landscape, realizing there isn't a single living soul or creature for miles. He finally pieces it together. The goddess didn't send him to a habitable world, she sent him to a literal planet-sized gym in the void. He clenches his fists, the fire of determination finally overriding the initial shock of the teleportation. It is time to stop complaining and start becoming the absolute monster he needs to be. Back in the celestial halls, the goddess of balance stands surrounded by her winged guardians, looking incredibly smug about her latest human acquisition. She is fully convinced she has predicted a glorious future for her new disciple and servant candidate. The reality is that she is playing a dangerous game of guessing with prophecies she only half understands. Being the disciple of a god who wings it with the future is a quick way to end up as a crater. The goddess smiles behind her veil, mentally piecing together fragments of a future where she holds all the winning cards. She envisions Yansung Choi becoming a powerhouse that drives every other petty constellation into a fit of jealous rage. In her head, she is already posing victoriously behind him as he bows his head in a show of eternal allegiance. She is clearly more interested in building a loyal pet than a capable hunter. The celestial guardian watches from the sidelines, her hand hovering near her spear as a cold sweat breaks out on her neck. She knows from experience that the goddess's overconfidence is usually the precursor to a localized, divine-level disaster. On the horizon of the abyss, a colossal blue hurricane of pure energy begins to tear through the atmosphere and the earth. Yansung stands tiny and insignificant against a storm that could erase entire mountain ranges in a heartbeat. The storm roars with a violent blue light, crackling with enough raw electricity to jumpstart a dead sun several times over. The goddess's voice echoes over the unfolding chaos, claiming this is just one of her toys designed to keep the mood light. Her idea of a safe and controlled training environment is basically just surviving the first 5 minutes without being completely disintegrated. He is about to learn that her training is less about practice and more about the simple act of not dying. Yansung Choi clenches his scarred fist while the goddess of balance's voice echoes across the empty void. She claims this lethal environment is just the bare minimum she can provide for his growth, treating his survival like a minor detail. Yansung stands alone at the center of a swirling magical vortex that looks capable of shredding reality itself. Training in the divine realm is clearly just a fancy word for surviving a cosmic meat grinder. Yansung Choi stares into the heart of the storm as he finally accepts the true nature of his predicament. He realizes this isn't some mistake or a cosmic accident, it is the actual trial his patron prepared for him. If a constellation went through the trouble of building this, he believes there must be a grand purpose behind the suffering. The guy is trying to find a silver lining while standing in the middle of a literal disaster zone. A massive pillar of raw blue mana erupts from the ground, dwarfing Yansung's silhouette and pinning him to the spot. The sheer pressure of the energy causes his teeth to grit and his muscles to bulge as he fights to stay conscious. He feels every joint in his body scream, admitting that his entire physical form feels like it is about to shatter. He is essentially being used as a human stress test for a magical hurricane. Yansung's frame bends backward under the crushing weight of the blue current while he struggles to keep his feet planted. The voice of the goddess demands he overcome the pain to reach a higher state of existence, showing no mercy for his agony. Jagged bolts of white lightning tear through the vortex, illuminating his desperate struggle against the collapsing air. Constellations definitely don't believe in the concept of a safe space for their disciples. Sharp shards of energy begin to splinter and fly off into the dark like pieces of shattered glass. The blue light intensifies to a blinding degree until the illusion magic protecting the territory finally snaps under the pressure. A massive ancient monolith covered in glowing, pulsating runes is revealed standing at the heart of the chaos. The safety filters are officially gone, and Yansung is now staring at the raw, unfiltered heart of the abyss. A massive, rune-etched monolith towers over a landscape of floating debris and swirling energy. This structure served as the core of the security illusion, but an unpredictable cosmic storm just tore the safety net to shreds. The goddess of balance stands frozen as the reality of the situation settles in. Even a divine plan can't account for a literal rift in the fabric of space. Two winged guardians stand at attention as the goddess tries to pinpoint Yeonsung Choi's location. She realizes with a jolt that his presence has completely vanished from the designated training zone. She expected him to walk right into the designated area, but instead, he's nowhere to be found. Losing your only disciple before the first lesson even starts is a pretty bad look for a high-ranking constellation. Bags of abyss protein and massive 56-kilogram kettlebells sit idle in a perfectly prepared training ground. The goddess had everything ready, from high-tier supplements to toys, for him to use during his limited spare time. She firmly believed a hunter's duty was to accept these harsh conditions and get to work immediately. She basically built a divine gym only for the client to go missing in transit. Aniclimax, the red-haired celestial guardian, hovers before her master with a report that makes the goddess's blood run cold. They've searched every inch of the perimeter, and Yeonsung Choi is officially off the grid. The goddess snaps, shouting that she definitely sent him to these exact coordinates. It's the celestial equivalent of losing your phone, except the phone is a human soul dropped into a monster-infested void. Aniclimax looks down at the jagged, blue-tinted wasteland of the abyss with a grim expression. She suggests that the human didn't just wander off. He was likely swept away by the sheer force of the magical storm. The goddess barks an immediate order for Aniclimax to find him before the environment finishes what the storm started. This rescue mission is now a race against a world that eats hunters for breakfast. Aniclimax grips her spear tightly as her massive white wings catch the light of the divine realm. She acknowledges the goddess's order with a sharp nod, promising to bring the human back from the brink. This celestial guardian is officially on the clock, and she knows exactly how high the stakes are. Failure means losing the only disciple the goddess has left to the void. Sharp, triangular islands of rock drift through a hazy purple sky that stretches into infinity. Aniclimax takes flight, appearing as a small silhouette against the massive, jagged landscape of the abyss. This place is an infinite space where even powerful constellations rarely dare to tread. Finding a single human swept away by a cosmic storm is a needle-in-a-haystack situation on a universal scale. She's flying straight into a literal void of nothingness. A mysterious girl with bandages covering her eyes appears briefly in a dim, stone room. The image cuts away just as fast, replaced by the roaring sound of a magical explosion deep within the rift. The abyss is a chaotic mess of shifting dimensions and lost memories. It's the kind of place that swallows you whole before you can even realize you're lost. Yeonsung Choi floats helplessly in a violent whirlpool of glowing blue energy. The massive flow of magic is so intense it threatens to tear his physical form apart at the seams. He gasps for breath, his eyes wide with the realization that he's completely alone in this crushing, deep sea of power. It's a terrifying baptism by fire for a guy who was just a low-rank hunter. The pressure alone would have turned a normal man into literal paste. Electric blue circuits of energy pulse through Yeonsung Choi's entire body, highlighting his internal structure. As he inhales the raw magic, the energy circulates through his blood and begins reinforcing his very foundation. His bones are visible through his skin, glowing with a divine light as their density and strength increase exponentially. He is undergoing a forced evolution that most warriors couldn't survive in 1,000 years. This isn't just training anymore. It's a total biological overhaul. Glowing notifications flicker against a deep sapphire void as Yeonsung Choi's internal core begins to warp under the pressure. His dantian physically stretches and expands to accommodate the massive influx of inner strength currently flooding his meridians. He is essentially rebuilding his entire spiritual biology into a walking nuclear reactor. The crazy part is he's just floating there in the cosmic soup, accepting this agony as a necessary trial for his growth. A stark white title card confirms that several grueling weeks have passed since he first set foot in this divine hellscape. Yeonsung Choi collapses onto the jagged terrain, his muscles trembling as blue energy lashes the air around him like electrified whips. He is panting and covered in grime, acknowledging that even the most basic training here is pushing him to his absolute limit. This environment makes a standard hunter boot camp look like a weekend at a luxury spa. Massive floating rocks drift through a desolate, airless canyon where the very atmosphere feels thick enough to drown in. Yeonsung Choi looks out over the horizon and realizes the magic storm dumped him into a lawless zone of the abyss where no constellations hold power. There are no rules and no divine safety nets to catch him if he slips up. He is officially off the grid and forced to rely entirely on his own grit to survive the localized chaos. A colossal serpent made of jagged, interlocking boulders bursts through the mountain wall in a violent explosion of dust and debris. Yeonsung Choi watches the creature coil its massive body and notes that it looks suspiciously like a giant rock-type Pokemon from his childhood. This thing is an A-rank predator, a literal mountain of moving stone designed to crush anything in its path. It is basically the final boss of the canyon, and it just found its next meal. Yeonsung Choi stares down the mountain-sized beast with a cold, analytical gaze that shows absolutely zero hesitation. Instead of retreating, he launches into a high-speed sprint, kicking up a trail of dust as he dives headfirst into a life-or-death struggle. He even has the audacity to call the monster Onyx, while charging in to turn it into a pile of decorative gravel. He has all the time in the world to master this place, and he's starting with the biggest thing in sight. Yeonsung puts every ounce of his body weight into a devastating, bone-crunching forward lunge. He connects with the creature's rocky hide with a thunderous impact, but the massive stone beast doesn't even shift an inch. It turns out that hitting a literal living mountain with raw human strength is about as effective as a fly hitting a windshield. The towering rock monster actually has the audacity to yawn, completely unimpressed by the supposed strike. Instead of being discouraged, Yansung stares it down and promises that one day, he'll reduce this entire creature to nothing but fine rubble. He isn't walking away in defeat, he's just officially declaring a very long, very violent training montage against the toughest target he can find. The scene shifts to a memory of the day Yansung first joined his hunter clan back in the human world. A clan leader holds up an old, battered martial arts manual that he managed to snag for free at an auction. The veteran hunters scoff at it immediately, knowing that raising inner energy through manual training is a notoriously slow, soul-crushing process that no one has time for. While the elite hunters are busy looking for quick shortcuts to power, Yansung quietly steps forward to claim the discarded book. He tells them he's always had a bit of an old-school taste, despite the senior hunters warning him not to waste his precious time on it. He is essentially volunteering for the hardest grind in the world while everyone else is searching for a magical cheat code. The manual contains the slow divine celestial technique, a discipline that most modern fighters find completely useless and outdated. The reality is that inner energy is the foundation of any true master, but this specific method is just too inefficient for the fast-paced life of a hunter. This is the exact moment Yansung chooses the path of the ultimate underdog, betting his entire future on a technique that the rest of the world literally threw in the trash. He's taking the long way around to greatness, and the results are about to become terrifyingly clear. Yansung Choi stares down at the weathered, yellowed pages of a martial arts manual with a look of absolute conviction. Despite having every opportunity to jump ship and learn a modern, high-tier hunter style, he refuses to abandon the divine celestial technique. The guy is essentially a purist in a world of shortcuts, betting his entire future on the beauty of a classic form. He's rejecting the modern meta just to become a master of the ancient basics. A massive serpent constructed from heavy, jagged boulders rises out of the debris to challenge him. Yansung Choi answers the beast with a devastating explosion of white-blue light that shatters the silence of the trial grounds. This isn't just a fight for survival, it's the perfect environment for him to test his newly forged limits against a mountain-sized training dummy. He's meeting raw stone with even rawer power. Blue static begins to crackle around Yansung Choi's fists as he clenches his teeth, his muscles bulging under the strain. He plants his lead foot so hard that the stone beneath his sneaker spiderwebs, preparing his body for a high-velocity impact. He's shifting from a defensive posture into a full-blown offensive storm in a matter of seconds. The man is looking like a literal lightning rod of focused, violent intent. He screams forward with a celestial punch that leaves a burning trail of energy hanging in the midair. Before the first impact even settles, he's already driving a knee upward with enough force to crack the serpent's rocky skull into pieces. It's a relentless, high-octane flow that shows he's finally starting to master the rhythm of his own internal power. He isn't just throwing hands, he's conducting a symphony of controlled destruction. As he moves, a ghostly silhouette of his nervous system flickers, showing the blue light flowing through his dantian. The secret to his growth is the repetition, where every ounce of energy spent in these strikes actually refines his internal reserves. He's turning the exhaustion of battle into a permanent power-up, one grueling punch at a time. It's the ultimate long-term grind that would break anyone without his insane level of discipline. Yansung Choi tightens his bandaged fist as a violent blue aura ignites around his knuckles. He concentrates every drop of refined energy into a single point of impact. The man is essentially turning his hand into a living wrecking ball. He lunges forward with a scream, slamming his fist directly into the stone ground with a thunderous impact. A massive shockwave ripples through the terrain, shattering the bedrock into a million pieces. This isn't just a punch, it's a total environmental rewrite. The massive rock monster stares in pure, googly-eyed confusion as the floor vanishes beneath it. Before the creature can even process the threat, a blinding white light swallows the entire battlefield. It's hard to maintain a poker face when your opponent just deleted the zip code you were standing on. Yansung Choi unleashes the full weight of his internal strike, creating a pillar of light that pierces through the dark abyss. The sheer force of the explosion vaporizes everything in its immediate radius. He's finally stopped fighting the environment and started dominating it. System notifications flicker across his vision, announcing that he has officially mastered the internal strike and reached the first class. His divine celestial technique just evolved, proving that his grueling repetition is paying off. Reaching the first class is the first real step toward becoming a constellation-level threat. He stands alone in a crater of shattered debris, his silhouette framed by the fading blue energy of his attack. The silence that follows is a testament to the absolute destruction he just caused. He looks less like a struggling hunter and more like a descending god. Yansung Choi slumps down on a jagged rock, catching his breath while looking genuinely disappointed in himself. He mutters that he's probably only B-rank and laments his supposed lack of talent. This guy has the most broken power scaling compass in history. He thinks back to Li Shaowan, the legendary Chinese hunter who reached A rank through pure martial arts. Yansung Choi is comparing himself to the world's elite while sitting in a graveyard of monsters he killed with a single punch. His humbleness is bordering on psychological warfare at this point. The frame shifts to a memory of the Zenith Master, Lee Sha-won, looking incredibly sharp in his gold-trimmed red martial arts uniform. He explains to a crowd of reporters that his specific combat class is Zenith, which is the absolute peak of 6th-level martial arts mastery. He confidently declares that his ultimate objective is to become the first S-rank martial arts user the world has ever seen. This guy is the gold standard that every hunter dreams of reaching one day. Yansung Choi stands in the quiet aftermath of the battle, staring down at his bandaged hands with a look of deep contemplation. He lets out a heavy, exhausted sigh, thinking to himself that at his current rate, he will never be able to reach that legendary S-rank status. Even after pulverizing a giant monster, he's still worried about his own lack of talent. The massive stone serpent lets out a series of low, vibrating grunts as it slowly lowers its giant head toward the ground. The beast has completely stopped treating him like a snack and is now staring at him with a level of intense, newfound respect. The apex predator of the abyss has officially realized that there is a bigger fish in the pond. A close-up of the serpent's eye reveals a shimmering, liquid-like glow that makes it look like the creature is actually on the verge of tears. Yansung looks around at the endless, jagged rock formations and admits out loud that he has absolutely no clue which direction he's supposed to go. He can kill a mountain-sized snake, but apparently, he can't read a map to save his life. In a sudden blur of movement, the stone serpent scoops Yansung up and places him securely right on top of its massive, rocky head. The titan then lunges its body high into the air, lifting Yansung hundreds of feet above the dust and debris of the battlefield. It's pretty wild to see a terrifying boss monster transition into a high-speed personal chauffeur. As they reach the peak of the serpent's height, a massive rift of crackling blue energy suddenly tears open in the sky right in front of them. Yansung shields his eyes from the blinding light, realizing that this mysterious portal is his ticket out of this desolate training ground. The trial is finally over, but the energy coming from that rift feels like it's hiding something much more dangerous than a stone snake. A violent, swirling vortex of blue energy screams across the sky, marking the return of a sound Yansung Choi hasn't heard since his first day in the abyss. Yansung stands his ground, shielding his eyes as he realizes the goddess of balance is likely throwing another lethal training ground his way. The sheer scale of the mana storm is enough to make any sane warrior turn and run. He looks more like he's checking the weather for a picnic than facing a localized apocalypse. Yansung points toward the eye of the storm and gives the command for his mount, Onyx, to keep moving forward. He knows for a fact that even the most legendary monsters in this realm can be instantly vaporized if they get caught in a mana surge like this. The stone serpent is clearly second-guessing every life choice that led to this partnership. Nothing says workplace hazard like being ordered to ride into a literal meat grinder. Electric blue lightning crackles through the atmosphere as the storm intensifies, turning the horizon into a chaotic blur of mana. Onyx begins to tremble, his massive stone body barely holding together against the overwhelming environmental pressure. The serpent has basically given up on survival at this point, feeling like his time is officially up. It's a bad day to be a rock snake with a master who has zero chill. The scene turns into a blinding kaleidoscope of magical energy as the vortex reaches its maximum destructive output. A tiny, muffled sound escapes from Onyx as he shrinks back, looking completely overwhelmed by the scale of the power around him. The colossal beast is being reduced to a terrified pet in the face of the abyss's raw fury. Even a giant stone dragon has its limits when the sky starts trying to delete everything in sight. Yansung watches the destruction with genuine fascination, commenting on how impressive the magic looks from his new perspective. His first-class ranking allows him to perceive the mana as it flows directly into his body, acting as a high-octane fuel for his muscles. The energy cleanses his fatigue and tempers his physique, turning a lethal disaster into a literal spa day. He is essentially using a Category 5 hurricane to recharge his internal batteries. Onyx is still desperately flailing his tail, trying to signal that this whole situation is a massive misunderstanding and definitely not intended as training. The reality is grim because if Yansung hadn't delusionally embraced this as a gift from the goddess, the storm would have ripped him to shreds. Despite the near-death experience, the guy shakes it off and immediately starts wondering what's for dinner. Survival is a great achievement, but the man clearly has his priorities straight. Yansung rubs his stomach while standing next to the now tame, massive stone serpent. He is survival ready but admits he is feeling a little peckish after surviving that insane storm. The stone serpent lets out a high-pitched "Q" and starts gesturing toward a pile of jagged rocks. Yansung stares at the rubble with genuine confusion, wondering if the beast actually thinks minerals count as meat. The guy is seriously considering eating gravel because his hunger is starting to override his human common sense. The stone serpent physically hands a giant, heavy boulder over to Yansung like it is presenting a gourmet steak. Yansung catches the massive rock, his mind racing with the thought that the monster might be trolling him for a century of physical abuse. He looks at the creature's big, blank eyes and realizes there isn't a single drop of malice in that rocky head. He gives the serpent a friendly pat, deciding he could never actually eat his new chauffeur even if he was starving to death. It is a touching moment of bromance between a martial artist and a giant sentient pile of earth. A golden system notification pops up right as the stone serpent recoils in a state of total shock. The message confirms that Yeonsung has gained a complete, absolute understanding of the giant stone serpent's nature. Yeonsung's expression shifts from casual hunger to intense, predatory focus as the new knowledge settles into his core. Intense purple mana begins to leak from his pores, signaling that his training is about to reach a whole new level of complexity. This isn't just a basic insight. He has basically absorbed the creature's entire evolutionary history through sheer observation. Yeonsung drops into a deep, flexible martial arts stance that looks as fluid as water but feels as heavy as lead. He begins practicing the newly acquired stone arts on the spot, his limbs moving with a hypnotic rhythm that mimics the serpent's slide. He throws a devastating palm strike that shatters the air with a massive burst of blue and purple celestial energy. Yeonsung stands amidst the settling dust, noting that while his divine celestial technique is his bread and butter, this new style is actually pretty fun. Every new level of enlightenment makes him more of a walking natural disaster, and he is clearly enjoying the power trip. Yeonsung stands at the precipice of a jagged rock formation, staring out at a vast, shimmering ocean of deep purple waves. He takes a moment to mentally prepare, wondering aloud what kind of brutal environment this next training ground is going to throw at him. To most, this would be a death sentence, but to him, it's just another piece of gym equipment in the world's most dangerous fitness center. The stone serpent, Onyx, tilts its massive rocky head in total confusion as Yeonsung sternly tells it to stay back and watch. Ignoring the sheer lethality of the water below, Yeonsung takes a running start and launches himself into a perfect, high-altitude dive toward the violet surf. The guy is essentially treating a sea of concentrated toxins like a casual morning lap at the local community center. A massive, violent explosion of pink and purple liquid sprays into the air the moment Yeonsung hits the churning surface of the ocean. Submerged in the depths, his face contorts in a silent MMPH as the corrosive properties of the water begin to sizzle against his skin and lungs. It's a claustrophobic nightmare where every second spent underwater feels like being dipped in a vat of industrial-strength acid. Red system notifications start flickering like strobe lights, warning him that his divine celestial energy is being devoured at a pace that could leave him empty in minutes. Massive, prehistoric-looking fish with jagged teeth and glowing eyes drift through the dark purple gloom, circling him like vultures in the deep. He is gritting his teeth so hard they might shatter, refusing to let the environment break his ironclad focus. Just as his energy hits a critical low, a new system window pops up to announce that his poison immunity has officially leveled up. A brilliant, piercing flash of light erupts from his core, signaling that his body has successfully metabolized the very toxins that were trying to kill him. This is the ultimate, level up or die, moment, and Yeonsung just cashed in his chips for a massive power boost. Onyx watches from the safety of the cliffside, its stony jaw dropping as the ocean begins to bubble and froth with terrifying intensity. Suddenly, a colossal pillar of purple water blasts into the sky with the force of a nuclear detonation, signaling Yeonsung's explosive return to the surface. The stone serpent lets out a high-pitched shriek of pure terror because its master has officially reached the point of being a walking, breathing natural disaster. Yeonsung collapses on the jagged shore, his chest heaving as he gasps for air. After that insane stunt underwater, his body is finally feeling the crushing weight of the abyss. It's hard to look cool when you're literally coughing up your lungs on a desolate beach. A memory of a brilliant, sparkling light deep within the dark purple depths flashes through his mind. He realizes that single glow is likely the objective the goddess wants him to reach. Too bad the path to that light is paved with man-eating sea monsters and bone-snapping pressure. He stands at the edge of the purple tide, hoping for some divine intervention or a hidden shortcut. The system immediately shuts that down with a massive, cold, false notification across his vision. Apparently, there are no participation trophies or easy modes in this hellscape. Yeonsung leans against a crumbling rock wall, sharing a look of mutual exhaustion with the stone serpent. He admits out loud that there is no other way forward except through a brutal, unending grind. Even the giant rock snake looks like it's starting to question its life choices. His bandaged fist begins to hum with a violent, violet energy as he focuses his internal mana. He isn't just getting ready to fight, he's preparing to physically rewrite his own limits. This isn't just mana, it's the raw willpower of a man who refuses to stay weak. Yeonsung snaps into a high-impact martial arts form, his movements tearing through the air with explosive force. The purple aura flares around him, turning his every strike into a potential earthquake. He's officially done talking and is ready to start the real training. He decides to go all in on the divine celestial technique to forge a core of inner strength that nothing can break. This is the only solution to surviving a world that wants him dead every single second of the day. The look in his eyes says he's ready to become something far more than human. The camera focuses on a stone surface covered in hundreds of frantic, scratched tally marks. Each line represents a day of blood, sweat, and absolute isolation in this wasteland. This isn't a training montage anymore, it's a multi-decade life sentence. Yansung stares blankly ahead, his face more rugged and his expression hardened by an unimaginable passage of time. He looks like a man who has forgotten what a normal conversation even sounds like. The silence of the abyss is starting to leave a permanent mark on his soul. The camera pans back to reveal a massive cliffside completely covered in thousands of carved tallies. He has been trapped in this training hell for 200 years already. Most people would have lost their minds a century ago, but he's just getting started. He turns to the stone serpent, watching the giant creature mindlessly munching on a pile of boulders. He casually asks the beast if it's really eating rocks for breakfast again. It's a sad state of affairs when your only social interaction is with a rock-eating chauffeur. Standing alone as the purple waves wash against the shore, Yansung admits that the magic of the abyss keeps his stomach full. However, looking at the sunset, he realizes he's missing something fundamental about being human. Surviving for 2 centuries is one thing, but actually living is something else entirely. A neon blue carcass washes up onto the toxic purple shoreline with a wet thud. Yansung spots the creature and immediately recognizes it as a native resident of the poison sea. This thing looks like it would kill a normal person just by being in the same zip code. Yansung stares at the jagged fins and decides that since it lives in the sea, it is basically just a fish. The stone serpent lets out a nervous whimper as its master declares the monster is perfectly safe to eat. He clearly values his appetite way more than his internal organs. Foul green steam begins to sizzle off the carcass as the toxic meat reacts to the air. Yansung doesn't even flinch, insisting that he needs to prepare the meal in a humane way before digging in. Most people would call this a suicide mission, but to him, it is just dinner and a show. Yansung marches over to a nearby boulder and starts smashing the life out of it with his bare hands. He carves the solid rock into a sharp blade and a flat cooking surface using nothing but brute force and celestial precision. The system actually rewards his DIY grind, officially labeling his new stone cutlery as completed cooking utensils. As the title card flashes, Yansung finally sits down to butcher the glowing blue beast on his new stone table. He handles the makeshift knife like a seasoned chef while the stone serpent watches from the sidelines in absolute horror. He is really about to turn a toxic nightmare into a 5-star survival meal. Vile green acid hisses and bubbles as it melts through the solid stone chopping board like it was made of cheap, warm wax. Yansung Choi stands there completely baffled as his carefully crafted kitchen set dissolves into a puddle of toxic sludge before he can even get a single slice into his prey. The stone serpent looks on with wide, terrified eyes, clearly realizing that its new master is trying to eat something that shouldn't even exist on a natural food chain. Yansung pulls out a jagged, glowing chunk of amantadine crystal to act as a permanent, high-durability replacement for his melted stone table. The golden rock doesn't even smoke when the monster's corrosive juices touch it, finally allowing the hunter to resume his butchery with a terrifyingly cheerful grin. Watching a man joyfully prep a meal that glows with a lethal, radioactive aura is enough to make even a giant rock monster want to go on a permanent vacation. A sudden flashback of a man in sunglasses reminds Yansung that maintaining a hobby is the only way to keep your sanity during a long-term training grind. He immediately embraces the role of an elite culinary master, imagining himself in full chef whites while seasoning a prehistoric monster head like he's the star of a 5-star cooking show. It is a pretty delusional mental image for a man covered in grime, but honestly, whatever keeps his spirits up in this desolate wasteland is probably a survival necessity. Yansung lifts a dripping, violet-colored hunk of raw meat that is literally steaming with a concentrated dose of magical toxins. He takes a massive, violent bite out of the raw flesh while recalling how he used to turn down delicious restaurant meals back on Earth just to stick to his bland training diet of chicken and broccoli. For a guy who treats every single calorie like a tactical resource for his muscles, eating a glowing poison steak is just another logical step toward becoming the strongest human alive. Blue celestial energy surges through Yansung's eyes as the system triggers an official warning that he has just consumed a high-grade lethal poison. He stands tall while thick white vapor pours out of his mouth, his internal organs being forced to metabolize the raw, destructive power of the beast he just butchered. The stone serpent is absolutely mortified because it's currently witnessing its master turn a literal death sentence into a very spicy, high-performance level up. Thick white and green steam vents violently from Yansung Choi's neck as his internal system confirms the impossible has happened. He is actively using the concentrated inner strength of the divine celestial technique to crush the high-grade poison into submission before it can liquefy his internal organs. Most people would be a bloated, purple corpse by now, but this guy is literally breathing out the very death he just swallowed like it's nothing but a heavy workout. Yansung Choi remains hunched over on the dirt, casually holding a pulsating, purple monster organ while toxic green fumes swirl around his muscular frame. He actually has the nerve to claim it tastes a bit spicy, and that it's edible, treating a high-grade lethal toxin like he's just eating some poorly seasoned street food. Even the dead beast on the sand looks confused in its final moments, realizing its ultimate biological weapon has just been demoted to a nutritional supplement for a total lunatic. His bandaged fist begins to hum with a concentrated golden pressure that indicates his spiritual core is finally starting to evolve under the stress. Yansung Choi stands tall with a look of absolute predatory focus, announcing to the empty wasteland that he's officially ready to catch the next round of prey. He's done just surviving the abyss. now he's actively scouting the horizon to see which monster is going to be his next meal. The massive stone serpent stays back on the shore while Yeonsung Choi stares down a vast, churning purple ocean that looks like a liquid nightmare. Violent waves of mana-infused water crash against the rocky coast with enough force to shatter bone, but he stands his ground without moving a single inch. This whole desolate landscape is basically becoming his personal high-intensity gym, and the atmosphere is getting noticeably heavy with his rapidly growing presence. A new sea beast tries its luck by surfacing near the shore, but Yeonsung Choi is already radiating a toxic green and gold aura that makes the air itself feel like lead. The scene shifts as time passes, with the system noting that through this grueling cycle of eating and killing, his mind and body have changed significantly. He is rapidly leaving his human limitations behind and becoming something that the native monsters of the abyss are actually starting to fear. Yeonsung Choi is seen casually chewing on a jagged, venomous bone spike like it's a toothpick while the system keeps flooding his vision with success alerts. He finally hits the jackpot by unlocking the A-rank skill, Unconquerable Poison Immunity, which is a total game changer for his survival in this hellhole. The crazy part is that he can now pull that concentrated poison directly from his dantian to use as an offensive weapon during combat. He has officially turned his own body into a walking, breathing biological hazard zone, and he looks like he's finally starting to enjoy the training. Yeonsung's entire frame is vibrating as a radiant, lime-green aura explodes from his skin. The system notification pops up to confirm that his divine celestial technique has officially ascended to the peak rank. He's finally broken through the ceiling of his current cultivation, looking less like a man and more like a localized natural disaster. The sky over the abyss turns a deep, bruised purple as Yeonsung stands before a wall covered in thousands of desperate tally marks. He runs the numbers in his head and realizes that by Earth standards, he's already hit the level of an A-rank hunter. That puts him in the category of a national strategic weapon, essentially a human nuke that most countries would kill to have on their payroll. It's a sobering realization to see how much of a monster he's actually become while just trying to stay alive. The massive stone serpent looms behind him like a loyal pet, but Yeonsung knows this is where their paths have to diverge. He gives the giant rock snake a final, almost tender pat on the snout while explaining that the next zone is way too lethal for a rock type like him. It's honestly a bit of a heavy moment seeing him bench the only thing that's kept him company in this literal hellscape. He is choosing to walk into the fire alone because he knows his power is the only thing that can handle what's coming. Yeonsung takes a massive, soaring leap off the cliffside and plunges straight into a churning ocean of toxic violet water. The system immediately pings his unconquerable poison immunity, which is the only thing keeping his skin from sloughing off the bone in this liquid death. Most hunters would be dissolved into a puddle of goo in 3 seconds flat, but he's just out here getting his morning cardio in. This guy really treats an ocean of acid like a heated community pool. Deep beneath the surface, grotesque fish monsters with bulging eyes and rows of jagged teeth scatter in a total panic as Yeonsung glides past. The narrative doesn't mince words here, officially declaring him the undisputed king of this entire ocean. The local predators are smart enough to realize that they aren't the ones hunting anymore. He's the apex of the apex, and he hasn't even broken a sweat yet. A blinding, sapphire-colored rift tears open the darkness of the seabed, pulsing with more magical energy than anything he's seen so far. Yeonsung recognizes the signature of a dimensional portal, the gateway to the next brutal phase of his training. He doesn't even pause to take a breath before diving headfirst into the light. The grind for godhood never stops, and it looks like the training wheels are finally coming off for real. Yeonsung Choi tumbles through a blinding white void as the dimensional portal consumes him. He dives headfirst into the unknown, his mind already racing with the possibilities of what kind of hellish workout is waiting on the other side. Most people would be screaming in terror, but this guy is actually disappointed that the travel time is taking so long. Golden system windows flash against the darkness as Yeonsung approaches the exit. The divine celestial technique detects an immediate threat, forcing his key veins to flare up and his body to brace for a violent impact. His landing is heavy enough to crack the local bedrock, and he's already leaking enough raw power to make a regular martial artist faint from the pressure. Glowing red eyes and jagged stone scales emerge from the deep shadows surrounding the landing zone. The level of killing intent here is unlike anything found in a standard dungeon, designed specifically to crush the spirit of anyone foolish enough to enter. It feels like the environment itself is trying to suffocate Yeonsung before the first blow is even landed. A horde of high-tier monstrous entities, ranging from dragonkin to armored demons, surrounds Yeonsung Choi in a tight circle. They aren't just mindless beasts, they're standing there with calculated patience, waiting for the signal to tear him limb from limb. The atmosphere is thick enough to choke on, but Yeonsung stands his ground without even the slightest flinch. A brilliant pink star bursts against a field of absolute black as the screen shifts focus. The narrative introduces the concept of constellations and the absolute authority they hold over the laws of their specific domains. This signifies that the training wheels are officially gone, and we're moving into a realm where physical strength is only half the battle. The gargantuan abyss warlord looms over Yeonsung like a gray-skinned mountain of muscle and malice. He lets out a deep, rumbling laugh that literally vibrates the air, clearly entertained by the tiny, glowing human standing in his shadow. The sheer scale of this guy makes every previous monster Yansung fought look like a common house pet. A massive, tusked mouth opens to reveal rows of jagged teeth as the warlord looks down at his new guest. He mocks Yansung by calling him a little friend, while Yansung just stares back with a face of pure, unimpressed stone. The disrespect is palpable, but the warlord is about to find out that this little friend has a very mean bite. The Abyss warlord leans in close, his glowing yellow eyes radiating pure malice and a hunger for combat. He finds the idea of a mere human entering his territory absolutely hilarious, and his aura begins to surge with violent, purple energy. The kid is about to get the most aggressive welcome party in the history of the Abyss, and honestly, he wouldn't have it any other way. The Abyss warlord looms over Yansung Choi like a living mountain, his expression shifting from a grin to something much more predatory. He tells the kid it's time for a quick explanation, but his idea of a chat involves manifesting a violent vortex of purple energy. It's the kind of welcome party that usually ends with the guest of honor in several different pieces on the floor. This monster isn't here to talk, he's here to see if Yansung is worth the effort of an actual conversation. From the center of that swirling mana, a massive, jagged cleaver begins to take shape in the warlord's hand, humming with the power of 1,000 battles. He introduces himself with the terrifying title of the Dominator of Blood and War, gripping the hilt of his massive weapon with enough force to crack the air. You definitely don't end up with a name like that by spending your weekends at the local library. The sheer weight of the blade alone looks enough to crush a normal human into a pancake before the edge even touches them. Yansung Choi stares up at the towering monster and that ridiculous blade, casually tightening the martial arts bandages on his forearms as if he's just warming up for a light jog. He actually has the guts to think the guy's title is a brutal concept, while the literal personification of war prepares to erase him from existence. Most people would be on their knees praying, but Yansung is just busy calculating how much weight he's about to have to lift. He's taking notes on the guy's branding while his life hangs by a thread. The warlord's eyes flare with a blinding white light as he commits to a vertical executioner's swing meant to split the entire chamber in half. Instead of dodging, Yansung stands his ground, clenching his fist until the purple aura of his own divine celestial technique starts to spark with intensity. He is going to try and parry a mountain-shattering strike with nothing but his bare, bandaged hands. It's a suicidal move for anyone else, but for him, it's just the first set of today's workout. The collision of steel and bone creates a blinding shockwave that tears up the stone floor and sends debris flying in every direction. Yansung's eyes glow with an intense, holy light as he grits his teeth, using every ounce of his spiritual energy to keep his skeleton from turning into dust. He is effectively turning his own muscles and marrow into a literal shield to survive a blow that should have vaporized him. This is the moment where all that survival training in the Abyss finally pays its dividends. The warlord's jaw drops in genuine shock when he realizes his killing blow has been caught mid-air by a mere human newcomer. Yansung is sent skidding backward from the sheer kinetic force, a heavy OMPH escaping him as he absorbs the impact and carves deep grooves into the floor with his boots. He's bruised, he's battered, and he's facing a monster that has barely even started to get serious. Yansung Choi stands over a fallen demon while red energy flares in the background. He kicks the broken body aside and tells the entire demonic horde to bring it on. The guy is basically inviting a whole neighborhood of monsters to his own funeral. Yansung Choi gathers blue swirling energy in his palm and announces he's just here to pass a test. The demons stop and stare, completely baffled by a tiny human's audacity. They think he's auditioning for a job instead of dismantling their entire world. A pink-skinned demon laughs hysterically while calling Yansung Choi a flimsy and shabby weakling. The horde roars for his head and charges, right as Yansung lets his massive pink aura explode. Underestimating this man is officially the last mistake these monsters will ever make. A horned beast roars for blood while the horde screams to rip the intruder apart. They charge Yansung Choi with everything they've got. He just stands there looking like he's bored and waiting for a bus. Yansung Choi launches forward and starts shattering jaws in a blur of motion. He delivers a flurry of strikes that turn these high-level demons into literal punching bags. It's officially less of a fight and more of a one-sided execution. Monsters shriek as the human blur cuts through their ranks like a hot knife through butter. The demons desperately shout to surround him and block his weird techniques. Good luck with that plan when you can't even see him moving. Shadowy hounds lunge through the red haze only to meet a wall of force. Yansung Choi pivots and unleashes a massive celestial kick that sends a shockwave through the entire room. That is definitely going to leave a mark. Yansung Choi stands amidst a vast red wasteland of monsters. He realizes the open terrain makes him a perfect target for a swarm. Getting surrounded like this is a massive logistical headache. A demon gestures toward his pack of flaming skeletal hounds. The monster mocks the intruder, claiming he is nothing more than dog food. These guys clearly haven't checked his resume yet. Flaming beasts leap through the air toward the protagonist. Yansung Choi grows frustrated with the seemingly endless waves of enemies. He is officially done playing nice with the local wildlife. Blue energy swirls around Yeonsung Choi's bandaged hand. He prepares a specialized technique to finally thin out the crowd. This is where things get really ugly for the demon horde. Blue energy surges through Yeonsung Choi's bandaged fists as he prepares to strike. He launches into a blur of motion, tearing through the demon horde like wet paper. These guys are clearly just target practice for him. A massive demonic skull looms behind Yeonsung Choi while the laws of this realm reveal themselves. In the Dominator of Blood and War's territory, the only rule is that everyone must fight incessantly. Standing still is basically a death sentence in this meat grinder. Yeonsung Choi caves in a beast's chest while scanning the horizon for higher ground. He decides he needs a strategic position to better manage the infinite waves of enemies. Even an elite martial artist needs a place to catch his breath. A small, stone building sits alone in the middle of the red wasteland. Yeonsung Choi sprints over and kicks the front door clean off its hinges. He casually tells the residents he's borrowing the place, which is one way to handle a house hunt. A small, horned goblin named Odagon looks up from a steaming pot with a wide smile. He welcomes Yeonsung Choi to his restaurant and insists that a warrior needs a full stomach to fight properly. This is easily the most polite interaction he's had since arriving in the abyss. Yeonsung Choi scratches his head while offering a weak apology for smashing the front door. He admits he's starving for real food, but Odagon reveals a pot of glowing green toxic soup instead. This little guy is definitely not getting a Michelin star for his hospitality. Odagon suddenly flips the cauldron and douses Yeonsung Choi in the boiling, corrosive liquid. Thick green steam rises from his clothes as the resident mockingly asks if the flavor is to his liking. This is one way to ruin a perfectly good tank top. Odagon's jaw hits the floor as Yeonsung Choi stands perfectly still in the toxic steam. System notifications reveal a complete poison immunity that lets him convert toxins into energy via his dantian. He's basically using a lethal assassination attempt as a free power-up. Yeonsung Choi calls the restaurant a hidden gem while Odagon shakes in absolute terror. The brief conversation is cut short when the demon horde finally tracks his location. These monsters really have the worst timing. A massive wave of demons storms the building with jagged blades and murder in their eyes. They scream for his blood, but Yeonsung Choi just responds with a sharp, predatory smirk. The prey just walked right into the middle of his training session. Yeonsung Choi grins as the first demon lunges for his throat. He snaps a kick into the monster's face while offering a mocking tip for their service. He's treating a life or death raid like a bad customer service complaint. More demons charge across the room through the wreckage of a kick table. Yeonsung Choi grabs a wooden chair and dares the entire horde to come at him. This is officially the deadliest furniture store in the abyss. The furious demon horde screams insults at the intruder for his sheer arrogance. Yeonsung Choi settles into a combat stance, realizing his stamina can easily last for hours. The crazy part is he's honestly just getting started. The screen fades to a chilling black as Yeonsung Choi prepares to unleash his poison-fueled masterstroke. He weaponizes his immunity and dantian control to turn the entire atmosphere into a literal vat of toxic soup.